Okay, when I say the word Japan, what's the first thing that pops into your head? Is it something like this?
Or how about this? Maybe this?
Or even this one.
It's this incredible mix, right? A place where ancient tradition and ultra-modern tech just seem to live side by side, no problem.
So, how does that even happen? How does a country that literally locked its doors to the rest of the world for centuries become this global cultural juggernaut? Well, the answer is an absolutely wild story of high-stakes, breakneck transformation. Let's trace how it all went down.
All right, to really get this, we've got to rewind the clock, way back to a time when Japan was the total opposite of global.
For more than 200 years, under what's known as the Tokugawa shogunate, Japan was basically in a self-imposed lockdown. The whole point was stability. Keep foreign influence out, and you keep your power and culture intact. The only tiny little crack in that wall was a trading post in Nagasaki, and only the Dutch and Chinese were allowed in. But then, 1853, everything changes. An American, Commodore Perry, sails these massive, steam-powered warships, they called them the Black Ships, right into Tokyo Bay and basically says, you're opening up for trade now.
And you can imagine the shock. It was profound. Japan's leaders looked at these ships and instantly realized they were centuries behind, technologically and militarily. The choice they faced was brutal, and it was simple. Modernize on our terms at a crazy pace or get colonized like so many of your neighbors in Asia. They chose to modernize.
And wow, did they ever. That single decision kicked off one of the most intense, rapid, and just radical national makeovers in all of human history.
So, first things first, the old military government, the shogunate, gone. Overthrown. Power is handed back to the Emperor Meiji. And this event, the Meiji Restoration, wasn't just some political shuffle. Now, this was the starting pistol for a race to build an entirely new, modern nation from the ground up.
And their to-do list? It was insane. I mean, look at this. They weren't just tinkering around the edges. They tore down the old feudal system to build a strong central government. They created a modern army where your spot was based on merit, not what family you were born into. And they just dove headfirst into absorbing everything from the West. Technology, science, political ideas, you name it.
And this is where it gets really fascinating. It shows you this wasn't just about copying machines. It was about grappling with completely alien ideas. Take a word like religion. The whole Western idea of religion as the separate box, distinct from philosophy or just everyday life, that concept didn't really have a direct equivalent in Japan. So to even talk about it, they had to take an old Buddhist term, shukyo, and basically pour this brand new Western meaning into it. They were literally inventing a new language to understand a new world.
Of course, change this, fast, this radical. It doesn't happen without a cost. For the new Japan to rise, the old Japan had to be dismantled. And that meant the samurai, the legendary warrior class that had been on top for 700 years, their time was over. They were stripped of their special status, their income was cut, and by 1876, they couldn't even carry their swords in public anymore. Think about that. Their entire identity was replaced by a new national army open to anyone. It was a massive, massive social earthquake.
Okay, so Japan is furiously downloading Western civilization, right? But here's the twist. At the very same time, a crazy reversal is happening. The West was becoming completely obsessed with Japan.
Yeah, this was not a one-way street at all. As soon as Japan opened up, its art started flowing out into Europe, and it landed like a creative bombshell. It totally electrified the art world.
The main thing that did it was this art form called ukiyo-e, these amazing woodblock prints. They were often called pictures of the floating world, showing scenes from everyday life, famous actors, beautiful women, and for artists in Europe like Monet, Degas, even Van Gogh, who were getting pretty tired of the super rigid, formal rules of painting, this stuff was a complete revelation.
And you can see exactly what blew their minds. Look at these techniques. The Japanese artists flattened out perspective. They used these bold diagonal compositions. They weren't afraid to zoom in on a subject or just simplify the background. This was a whole different way of seeing things compared to the traditional single-point perspective that had ruled Western art for centuries. This influence, which got the name Japanism, was a huge, huge ingredient in the birth of Impressionism, and really all of modern art.
Right, so this dynamic of absorbing, adapting, innovating, it would be tested again, big time. The 20th century was, of course, incredibly turbulent, and after World War II, Japan found itself at another one of these massive turning points.
Absolutely devastated by the war, Japan had to start over. Under the Allied occupation, the country adopted a new democratic constitution and a whole new set of values. From there, the nation just poured all of its energy into rebuilding the economy, shifting its focus from military power to industrial and technological innovation. And that right there set the stage for the famous economic miracle that came next.
Which brings us, finally, to today. This whole incredible journey, from isolation to this frantic modernization to post-war rebuilding, it created the perfect conditions for Japan to become not just an economic giant, but the cultural powerhouse we know now.
Because that whole intense process of learning, adapting, and then making it their own, it forged a completely unique cultural identity. And today, the stuff that comes out of that identity is everywhere. We're talking manga, anime, video games. This isn't some niche hobby anymore. This is a massive part of global pop culture.
You know, there's actually a name for this kind of influence. It's called soft power. It's the ability for a country to attract and persuade people through its culture and its ideas, rather than through military force or money. And the Japanese government knows this. They even launched the Cool Japan initiative back in 2002 to strategically promote all this stuff around the world.
And that really brings us full circle. The global appeal of Japanese culture that we see everywhere today, it's a direct line from those dramatic, high-stakes decisions made over 150 years ago. That intense period of change, that crucible during the Meiji Era, it forged a cultural DNA that is just unbelievably dynamic.
So, you go from a nation that was completely sealed off to a global trendsetter. It's an incredible story of transformation. Which kind of leaves us with one last fascinating question, right? After mastering this cycle of absorbing ideas from the outside and then exporting its own unique culture back out, what's next? What's the next stage in Japan's cultural evolution?